Hi guys, it's Kitty, your friendly neighborhood raid leader, and today I've just made a very short video where we're going to run through in a very high level how to parse in Star Wars. So just to explain a little bit about what is parsing. So parsing is when we use an application to extract data from our combat logs in order to produce outputs that tell you how much damage you're dealing, how much healing you're doing, or perhaps if you're a tank, how much damage you're taking per second. Now, why would we want to do this? Well, in essence, parsing allows us to really improve our gameplay. It allows us to improve our rotation and to get to know your class just more intimately. Because when you parse either in an operations or environment or on a combat dummy, you have that data, that feedback, that visual representation in numbers of what your performance is, and then you can use that to benchmark against your guildies, your fellow raid members, or even if you want to look at the leaderboards on the Star Parse website, you could see what other people of your class are doing. So it does give you a really nice temperature check of what your performance is like. Now, I think for the average player, obviously, it may not be super important if you're kind of a solo player, you're going through the story, etc., and you do most of your activities with your companion. So let's say 50% of the content in Star Wars, you probably don't really need to be parsing. However, when you start to do operations, or even if you're participating in PvP, or if you had thoughts about moving on to a progression raiding team for hard mode or nightmare level difficulty, then parsing is an absolutely essential tool to help you to improve your capability on your class. So moving on to what's actually needed to parse. The first thing is we need a very specific application, as there is only one that is compatible with SWTOR, and that is called Star Parse. So you can download that from the internet. I just happen to have the page open in my browser here to show you guys, but you go to this URL, which is ixparse.com, and you can click on the big green button on the landing page that says Get Star Parse. So that will download an installer, and then you can subsequently install Star Parse. Just to draw your attention to some of the interesting things on this site, if you really wanted to fully understand the information that the application provides and understand how to use the full potential of Star Parse, I would highly recommend just going through features and having a look at some of the data points. It tells you, as it says here, calculated values, so things like DPS, HPS, APM, which is your ability per minute, which is important as it has a direct impact on your DPS and HPS, threat, damage taken per second, so these are our tanking stats. It also tells you about timers, so how to set timers on particular mechanics from particular bosses, which is incredibly useful for operations. It also has a leaderboard, so you can enter some filters and some variables to show you some specific information for your class and spec. So I would encourage you to have a brief look through the website and the different information there, just to get a better idea of how to fully use Star Parse. So you've downloaded Star Parse and installed it. Now you've opened the application for the first time, and this is what you see. Now I'm not going to go through everything because most of it's self-explanatory and it's up to yourself to explore the application, but I just want to crowd out a couple of key things that are very useful. So the first is interface, and this allows you to choose what overlays that you're going to see in game when you're parsing. So what information you're going to see when you're parsing. So you pretty much always want to have your personal stats enabled when you're parsing on a dummy, because you're not going to know how you're doing otherwise. So it tells you information such as your APM, DPS, HPS, etc. Now, if you're in an operations, then and you want to see how you're comparing to other people on your team, or just in general, if you're a raid leader and you want to gauge whether or not that you have enough damage or healing for a particular encounter, then you might enable raid damage and raid healing. So that shows a list of everybody that's on the joined group parse. So if you want to set that up, that's under the raiding tab. Basically, it would just involve you joining a raiding server, which is usually been created by someone like an ops leader or a guild master, and you can join and you can see this information. There's also timers, which are basically just timers on specific mechanics from particular bosses. So for example, this is the first train that arrives in the Trandoshan squad encounter in Daxon, and you can see that there's other ones that have been added by default by the app developer, so you don't have to manually create that timer. Now, obviously, in order to parse, you need to have parse activated. So before you enter any parsing session, whether it's hitting your dummy or perhaps maybe in PvP or any other form of combat, you want to click on parse. So just click that now. So it goes green, and that basically tells you that it's now capturing any combat that your currently logged in tune is doing. So if you want to join and see the stats for your raid, then you would click on parse, and you would also click on the raid button as well. So we've downloaded and installed Star Parse, and the application is ready to go. What else do we need? So if we were simply going into an operations or into PvP or something like that, at this point all we would simply need to do is click parse. As I mentioned before, your overlay would come up when you engage in combat, and then you'll be able to see how much damage you're doing or healing, etc. But if you want to parse for improvement's sake, so for instance, if you wanted to tweak your rotation or improve your rotation and just basically practice and get better, then you would need an operations dummy or a training dummy. So actually, it doesn't have to be an operations dummy. It can also be a Warzone dummy, because the stats actually in Warzones are bolstered differently to the way they are in operations. So that's why the game has created two separate dummies to give you a more accurate representation of what your damage and your healing would be in either scenario. So for the purpose of this video, we'll just work with the operations training dummy. Now there are two different places that you can access this dummy. Three actually, my bad. But the first is to permanently unlock it on your ship, and in order for you to do that, you need to go to your legacy. You can just press Y on the keyboard, or you can click on that menu there. You go to Global Unlocks, Other, and here you will see all of the available quality of life unlocks that you have for your family. So all of these are family-wide or legacy-wide, so you can access them on your characters. So you have Operations Training Dummy and Warzone Training Dummy. Obviously, if they're unlocked, they'll have a credit or a cartel coin value there. And you also unlock the Repair Droid, because we're going to use a couple of the items that's sold by the Repair Droid in order for us to parse. So you've unlocked Operations Dummy, you can unlock Warzone Training Dummy if you're going to be doing PvP, and you're going to unlock your Repair Droid. Now, if you didn't want to shout out the credits to purchase or unlock the training dummies for your ship, then you can also use the free one on the Gab Daragon on Fleet. So just simply travel to Fleet, and then you can quick travel to the Gab Daragon and go to the bridge deck there. Alternately, you can also use the training dummies if you have the Alderaan or Rishi strongholds. They should be there too. So we're almost ready. The next thing we want to do is just to purchase some items from the repair vendor, which we'll go through now. So if we interact with the repair vendor, he gives us a bunch of different items that we can use actually on our training dummy. So we have here some options for the different modes. So if you want to drop the level of your training dummy to level 70, for instance, in master mode, to get an accurate picture of how your performance would be in this particular mode, you can purchase this module, apply that to the dummy, and off you go. Very important to do on every parsing session is we want to purchase the training dummy armor reduction module. Now, I'm not going to read out everything it says in the tooltip there, because you can read for yourselves or interact with the dummy and take a look. But ultimately what it does is that it applies very similar armor debuffs and conditions to the operations dummy that you would find in ops. So it basically gives it a more level playing field when you start the parse, because the conditions are going to be similar to what you might find on a boss in an operation. So we're going to purchase that. And we also have health modulators. Now you can get them in a variety of different sizes, but what it does is that it gives a static HP for the dummy. So this enables us to see how we're going to perform over a set period of time or a set number of HP, so you can really gauge what your sustained damage is going to be. You know, it'll help things like, you know, improving or tweaking or adjusting your energy management if you find that you really start to drop off after, you know, 3 mil HP, or even before that. So it's just having longer health pools over time give you a nice accurate picture of your sustained damage, in addition to allowing you to utilize certain abilities that will only proc if the HP of a target is under a certain threshold. So for instance, you know, you may have certain you know, like if you were a guardian, then you might be you can only do dispatch if the target is under a certain amount of HP. Similar to Slinger, there may be abilities that that only proc after a target is under a particular set of health. So that would be the justification behind those. Most people kind of, well, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve, but we'll just take one of each. So we'll go with 6. Okay, so depending on how long you wanted to parse for, you would apply one of these. Also, it prevents, because your dummy dies as it has a set amount of HP, it prevents the downtime impacting your parse between the time that you stop hitting the dummy and also the time that you click stop parse in Star Parse. So you'll find that even just, you know, 5 or 10 seconds downtime will significantly impact your parse, and you don't want that. You just basically want a very limited window for the application to be measuring, you know, from the start second to the end second, so you have that accurate picture. So you want to click on the dummy, and in order to apply the various modules that we have just purchased from the repair droid, you simply right click. So I've gone ahead and done that already. So you can see once you targeted the dummy. So now that we have the buffs on the dummy, so the buff and debuff, should I say, well, the health modulator and the debuff on the dummy, we want to ensure that our parsing application is enabled. So simply click on the parse button on Star Parse, go back into your Star Wars and start parsing. Now, sadly, my screen capture application does not show or capture the Star Parse overlay, so you're not going to be able to see my overlay up here, but I have gotten Lemon to create a video of parsing for me, which I have stuck at the end of this, or well, which will transition immediately after the end of this clip, and you can see what it looks like when you are parsing on the operations dummy. And that is that. So I hope that you've enjoyed the video so far. As I said, the next clip is going to be of what the flow looks like of someone actually parsing on the dummy and what the overlay looks like. But there are a lot of very knowledgeable people in the guild, and if you have any questions on this video, then feel free to ask me or pop them into the class help chat channel on Discord, and we would be more than happy to answer any queries that you may have. And I really wanted to make this video because I think that a lot of people sometimes just kind of stumble through the game and they do what they have read, maybe potentially on a guide, but they have no way of measuring their performance if they aren't parsing. So you may be clicking the right buttons, but they may not potentially be in the right order for your playstyle, and you know, there could be room for improvements, in particular if you're heading towards progression rating, and this is like such a powerful tool to help you do that. So I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope you got something out of it. And as I mentioned already, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask us in the Discord. Okay, thanks very much, guys.